okay? We elected a guy who's never flown that plane before. And it's not that he's intentionally trying to crash it. He didn't know how to fly it. And that's what you have to start thinking about when you elect people in the future. You know, look, I ran on a platform, and if we all change and think about this, I ran on a platform that said, I will never hire another politician who I wouldn't hire in my own business, who I wouldn't put in charge of one of my own businesses, who I wouldn't look at their experience, their background, and decide this is somebody that I am comfortable with being in one of my own businesses. And then I sit in a room with CEOs, I do this all the time, and I say, how many of you guys would hire President Obama in your business? Not one of them puts their hand up. Now if you think about it, that's the problem. It's not that he's intentionally doing it, he doesn't know any better.
I need to know from somebody who's in Washington, what happens to those people, like the 30 Democrats, who wanted to vote one way, but were told, no, you can't, you have to vote this way. What's the threat? What makes a man who believes in something vote differently? Because what's the threat? What are they holding over his head or your head or anybody's head to make them change their votes?
Well, you have to be in that situation to understand it. For me, it doesn't affect me because the threat is that you'll never get a bill passed, you'll never be heard in Congress, and they'll never support you for re-election. For me, I mean, I'm down there not because I need the job, not because I, want to have a career. I'm down there to change things. So the threat doesn't affect me. And if you notice my votes, I never vote political. And again, some of you might see my votes and say, what kind of a crazy vote was that? Well, it's either because there was a legal situation or something. I'm always going to vote my conscience and vote exactly the way you would vote if you had all the information. I have not cast a political vote yet, and I don't plan on doing it. And quite frankly, the reason I can't do it is because if one of you asked me why I voted for something and I can't remember why because it was a political vote, shame on me. So there are a lot of times, I'll give you an example, even on that same vote this week, that Republicans voted yes, and then when they saw it was going down, they switched their votes. There was 14 or 15 Republicans that switched their votes. So, I mean, some of these guys, you ask them, why did you switch your votes? Well, I got to go back home and I'm going to have a primary. And there's going to be some far-right person who's going to try and run against me because I passed a bill. And so I'm going to jump on the bandwagon with all the far-right people and try and save myself in a primary. Well, shame on them too.
It's hard to have hope when you hear, the people go down there wanting to do the right thing, and then the good old boys get a hold of them and...
Well, I don't know if it's the good old boys. Think about what I just said.
Whatever.
Just think about what I said. There are people that are
worried about their job.
They're worried about their job, or they're worried about a primary where the far right's going to make as much noise. Let's think about the country, the other thing I've kind of learned about. And it's great to have as many people as we have here today. But the real problem with our country is that 75% don't really care right now. The other 25% do, and they're the most vocal. So you got 15 on the far left and 15 on the far right. You got a guy trying to do the right thing, and when it gets down to being voted back in, you got the far right and far left making all the noise, and everybody in the middle is listening to one of them. That's the problem. So they realize that, and they vote to try and get back in. But if you don't get back in, you can't get anything done. It's like I sat in a plane this week with two Democrats, labor union Democrats, and it was interesting because I had my jacket off, but I had my pin on, and so we're talking, and one guy's losing his job, and the other guy's talking about this labor union, and you got to remember, my family was labor union, blue collar labor union, so I can get along with anybody, and nobody knows the difference. We're sitting there talking until the question came up, so what do you do for a living? So I could have said, I'm a business guy, which I am, but I said, I'm a member of Congress. And he goes, whoa. But the interesting thing was, he started to really get loud, but it wasn't mad at me. He was mad at the Democrats, he was mad at the Republicans, he was mad at everybody down there. And everybody around me in the plane was like kind of looking back. And he should be mad, but I go, hey, I've only been there 9 months. I said, the system is the system. I said, and I agree with you. And I gave him my card, he's losing his job. I said, tell me your story. you know, later on, send me an email. I want to follow up on your story. But that's the difference. You know, people are afraid because everybody thinks we're bad down there right now. I mean, how would you like to take a job where you're trying to do something and automatically the first thing that happens, people see you and they call you idiot? I mean, I can give you some real bad names they've called me. And I'm sitting there thinking, I'm just trying to fix this place. And then at the same time, yeah, I've been called rhino, squishy, whatever. I don't know what all the numbers. And I'm sitting there thinking, give me one vote that you would disagree with me on. And I've had people in the Tea Party, not all of them, you know, and again, I still feel that 85% of the Tea Party somewhat likes my positions. That's just my opinion. I may be wrong. But the 15% that don't put up their hand, they say, you're a rhino because you voted for the CR. Well, the CR takes us back to 2008 levels. So what do you want us to do? I want you to balance the budget. I want you to cut, cut, cut. You want me to cut Social Security? Right. And see, nobody wants to answer that question. Because when you talk to some of the far right of the Tea Party, no, I want you to cut out all the wasteful spending. Okay, let's do that. That takes a real small sliver out of the deficit. I want you to raise taxes. I mean, some of them do say that. I want you to raise taxes. Okay, that takes out some real small sliver. Remember, if you tax the billionaires and millionaires 100% of their earnings, now remember, 100% of the earnings, you're still only taking a sliver out of the deficit. The problem with the deficit is we have a system that was set up to make sure that we have systems that were set up 41 years ago that need to be revised. So that's the reason.
Jim, is your office familiar with the document recently put out by the Heritage Foundation, Saving the American Dream?
Yes.
It's good material.
Yeah.
You need to digest that.
Yeah, it's, you know, it's interesting, and I know there's probably some people here that are very supportive of the Heritage Organization. You know what I found out? The Heritage Organization is another group that has opinions that we need to look at, but you got to remember they're only their opinions too. And some of those guys in the Heritage were previous congressmen and previous senators, and I always get fed up. And I'm not attacking the Heritage group here at all, don't get me wrong. Of course, they already said that I'm only 57% on their voting scale. And by the way, that's another thing that's kind of a joke, because they took 30 votes out of 700, and out of those 30 votes, they decided whether you're with the Heritage or what percentage you're with the Heritage Foundation. And my chief of staff, not my chief of staff, my press secretary used to work for the Heritage Foundation. So I have a good inside view of that group. And they have kind of split off now. There's two groups within the Heritage Foundation. There's the policy group, which still is just looking at policy, and then there's the political group, which is looking at candidates. And you almost have to determine which one. That's the pot came out of the policy group, which is a good sign.
Many of the things you said today are in this.
Right.
And your office needs to make a hard look.
Yeah, and I agree. And we do. You know, that's one thing you'll find out about a congressman. I mean, somebody says, "What do you do all the day?" I probably got about 8 hours sleep this past week, because not only am I starting at 7:30 and ending at 11:30, I'm getting up at 5 in the morning to read this stuff. I mean, I almost feel like I'm back in college in my dorm room trying to cram every week that I'm down there. And that's the only way you pick up ideas. But the reason I said that, because I stood in front of Newt Gingrich came to the, and again, I'm just giving you my opinions. Newt Gingrich came and stood in front of the freshman class and started telling us what we should do. And I literally got up and walked out. Because my opinion is, if he was there for 18 years, if he could have fixed it, he should have fixed it then.
Yes.
Don't come to us now and tell us what we should do. Why didn't you do it back then? So, that's somebody back there.
Have you seen the GAO report on all the duplication of services?
Yes.
That Tom Coburn had brought up. Thoughts on that? And then I keep hearing on the news and hearing everywhere, 48 to 50% of people do not pay taxes. Who are they? I've read a couple things, but I've never not had to pay taxes. I've always paid them. I get in that group.
Well, the tax system is set up, let's face it, the tax system is set up so 48 to 50% of people don't pay taxes. And there are a lot of people that have small jobs. I mean, the system needs to be revamped too. There's no doubt about it. I mean, I'm a CPA. I can tell you that I've done tax returns for kids in college that are getting $4,000 refunds. I've done tax returns for people that, I mean, the system is full of loopholes. We need to get rid of those. We need to simplify the tax system. But that's the people.
Okay. But your thoughts on the GAO, how the duplication of services and stuff? I mean, you go through it and read it, it's mind-boggling.
Look, the system's so big.
Nobody's mentioning these cuts.
Well, they are. You got to, and again, I know it's hard to believe, and maybe it isn't. The government is so big. It is so big that it takes you a long time to sort things out. I mean, I'm on the Financial Services Committee. It's one of the 4 top committees in the United States government. We are handling Dodd-Frank. That was a 2,000+ page bill. We are doing oversight on overlapping committees. We're doing on how much the FEC oversees all these other boards and all. We're doing that. So that's all I do. And then somebody will come up to me and say, what do you think about the Department of Defense? And I go, I'm spending probably 100 hours a week now trying to read up on Dodd-Frank. So you have to understand that the government is so big. It's one of the things we got to do. We got to rein it in. And then we've got to be able to sort through it and eliminating this overburdenance and crossing over. So it's happening. It takes time. I'll be honest with you, a guy there 9 months would never be able. I'm just trying to learn Dodd-Frank right now and be specific enough to be able to answer questions and be able to talk to somebody like Barney Frank, who sits on the other side, and literally be able to stand my ground with them. The only way you stand your ground with Barney Frank, who's been there 40 years, is you beat him up with facts. And that's the only way to do it. You started us.
I just had a question that's kind of personal to you, but why do you have such a big target on you other Democrats? Now, it's my understanding the seat you now hold before the district was a Republican seat for years, and it was lost to a one-term Democrat in the then he won the seat back, which was primarily a Republican seat to begin with. And the Democrats just lost it. Why do you have a big target on it? What did you do?
Well, just remember, when you're good, they're going to try and get you out of there. I mean, I hate to say that. And here's the other thing. When you take out one of their soldiers, I mean, John Bocheri was clearly a soldier of Nancy Pelosi. He would walk the plank for Nancy Pelosi and Barack Obama. They love their soldiers. And, you know, it's funny, I was with a lobbyist this week, and he said to me, you were the #1 target of the Democratic Party because you took out their soldier. They kept saying, who is this Renacci guy? We got to get him out of the way. And they just couldn't do it because the people made the decision. They spent $8 million making me look like a horrible person. And they still couldn't, because I think people were smart enough, and I worked hard enough, and I got out, and I talked to enough people. They realized, I'm just a normal guy, blue collar. Yeah, hey, they're going to call me the millionaire. But I got to tell you, the day we take away the opportunity for somebody to live the American dream in this country, shame on all of us. That's what I did. I started from a blue-collar family, started a business with a couple $100, lived the American dream. I think everybody should have that opportunity. Not that right, that opportunity. And so when they started calling me the millionaire, the guy that doesn't understand the middle class, I mean, I got to tell you all a funny story. I sat in an airplane. Betty Sutton and I fly back and forth together. Well, yeah. And what's interesting, and Marcia Fudge flies back and forth. So the three of us are on the plane together almost every week. Well, Marcia, quite frankly, believe it or not, she's not a very, you know, I guess I can't judge her as a congresswoman other than what I hear, but she is a sweetheart. I mean, she'll come up, she'll sit down, she'll talk. We'll talk about friends and family. And my wife was with me one time. She even told my wife, next time you're in D.C., I want to take you around and show you around. I thought that, you know, that's a nice compliment for a woman. I tell everybody, Marcia Fudge is a sweetheart. On the other hand, Betty Sutton I never see. Now remember, she's flying on the same plane. The only time we see her is when she's getting in the plane. So I even said one day to Marcia, because Marcia will sit next to me, I'll say, you know, out in the waiting room, I says, well, how come Betty doesn't talk to you? I said, I can see her not talking to me. She goes, she doesn't talk to too many people at all. So one day I was in the plane, and Betty was looking at her ticket, and she had to sit next to me. And so, interesting enough, we started talking. And I did the same thing that I always do to everybody. Hey, Betty, you know, we're in this together. Give me some of your ideas. What are some of your thoughts? And she said, well, I'm all about jobs. Really? I said, really, Betty? That's good. So am I. And she goes, well, you wouldn't understand that because, you know, I said, really? She goes, yeah, I'm for the blue-collar union person. I said, well, Betty, I was a blue-collar union person. And then she said, well, you know, you just won't understand that. I go, well, Betty, tell me how cap and trade help jobs. And, you know, well, you didn't understand green energy. We need to be able to manufacture jobs, blah, blah, blah. And I said, Betty, we live in a state where 88% is coal-driven. Don't tell me about green jobs. I said, I believe in some states that would have been a good idea, but not in the state of Ohio. And then she said, I said, but tell me how the health care bill helped us with jobs. Ah, she goes, you know, it gives people the opportunity to start their own job. And I said, Betty, health care costs are going up. And then she says, well, even like cash for clunkers. She said, look at what I was able to do. And I said, Betty, I was a dealer. I said, I'll tell you what cash for clunkers did. It did nothing for me. In fact, it hurt me.
You did one good thing, Jim.
What's that?
It took 95% of the Obama bumper stickers off the road.
Yeah. So I could see we weren't getting anywhere. And I mean, she even made a comment. I can't remember exactly what it was. This conversation's getting too heavy, and she pulled out a magazine and started reading it. So I said, well, let's start talking about family. And she made some comment about her husband, who was a firefighter, and I said, that's great. And she said, she made some comment like, well, you wouldn't understand that, although she didn't say it that way. And I said, Betty, I was a fireman. I understand firefighting. And I think I just stopped her in her tracks right there. So it's interesting because I'll be a target again. Betty Sutton will be, you know, she is a soldier of Nancy Pelosi. But I always tell people, I'm not going to go negative. If you notice, I didn't go negative on Bocherry. We always just kept saying, Pelosi, Bocherry, Pelosi, Bocherry. You'll probably see Sutton, Pelosi, because she does vote lockstep and barrel with the Democratic Party. And but I'll be a target again, and you know, that's the reason you have to raise money. The biggest problem I have with my new district is that it took my old district, and I spent 2 years, and anybody who knows me, Ralph knows this, I went hand to hand, met everybody, shook hands, got to know everybody in Ashland, Stark, Wayne. And now they took my district and they turned it upside down and then threw a challenger in right now. So, you know, you could say it's good or bad in a way, but now I got to start all over. I got Cuyahoga County, who I have to go handshake and get to know everybody just like this. So I'm going to need all of your help. And then Betty's, they're going to say we're going to try and protect her, so they're going to launch, you know, their attack against me. But it'll be a lot of the same, car dealer, millionaire, blah, blah, blah. I hope people are smart enough to realize that it's the same old thing.
Can we change subject just a matter? What's the rhetoric going on around Washington concerning the U.S. relationship with the U.N.? They're talking global taxes, global wars, global arms control. That works.
Yeah, well, you saw what the talk is. We're right now in a situation of cutting costs, cutting expenditures, cutting some of our funding to the UN, cutting a lot of that stuff. So
have they actually cut funding to the UN?
Well, we have cut certain budgetary provisions for the UN, but again, that's the House Republicans. So has it actually been cut? No. We can only do so much. Remember, you know, a lot of people come up to me and say, you're not doing enough, you're not getting this done, you're not getting that done. Just keep in mind that this country was developed by some very smart people. You know, our Constitution allows for a House, a Senate, and a President to get something done. The biggest mistake we made is we allowed the House, the Senate, and the President to all come on board and to all change things rather quickly. We almost need to go back to a House, a Senate, and a President that's all Republican, so we can reverse some of that and then get back to the point where we're doing the people's job.
as I see it, if we get a super majority back in the Senate, a conservative majority in the Senate, and a conservative president, would you be for eliminating a lot of these onerous government agencies that are non-constitutional, like the Department of Education,
Oh, absolutely.
Department of Energy,
Yeah.
HUD, all this stuff? I mean, where in the agency we allows for this? Because as long as they're a line item in the budget, they will be funded. So I think the simplest way is to eliminate the entire department.
Well, I'm not going to disagree with you except this. If you take a car going 100 miles an hour and put a brick wall in front of it,
That'll stop it.
yeah, it'll stop it. But it's going to get ugly. So I think what you need to do is you need to bring it down slowly, and I think you would just keep, yeah, just phase it totally out. Again, I don't think anything, whether you're in business, personal life, or you throw the wall up at a 100-mile-an-hour car. I think you phase it out, and that's what we would have to do with all of this. So absolutely, I'm for it, and we need that. We need a president. Look, the one thing we do need, we need a president who knows how to lead. We don't have that right now.
Who would that be? You gotta.
And somebody else going to get that.
There's all these scandals going on, and some of it, you know, the amount of taxpayer money, and buying your services, it's worth this problem, watch out. And the other thing is a lot of the banks have said that they paid back all these dark monies and loans that they were given, and there's no accountability. The last I heard on the news was they don't know where the money went, and this is billions of dollars. Is there any accountability in Washington at all about where all our money goes, and does anybody know? Is it even audible? You know what I mean? It just
Well, if you're paying attention to this current Congress, we have oversight committees. We just did an oversight on the Madoff in my committee, Madoff tragedy. There is oversight. It's tough to get answers. You have people pleading the fifth, which we just saw. So it's tough to get all the answers you want. But the answer is at least you have a Congress now that has oversight. You didn't have that before. So we're going to continue to do that. But keep in mind, it's a massive, massive machine.
Well, I understand that.
And even if you eliminated all the waste and fraud, and I'm not saying we shouldn't, I know we have to. Even if you eliminated all the waste and fraud today, put that wall up and eliminate it, you're still going to have massive deficits because you have a system that is growing so rapidly that we can't control the ability to fund it. Well, it wasn't a federal debt, it was a guarantee, which is, yeah, it's a guarantee. Well, I can tell you guarantees are a lot different in many cases. I've had plenty of guarantees that get picked off, and you wonder what's going on here. So it depends on how it's written. Guarantees are a little bit different than having a debt. We probably have time for just a couple more questions, and I want to ask one.
Congressman, we're talking about the government being so large. Why is there never a committee on truth, especially in mass communication? I said so many of the people in our country will see something on TV, or read it in the newspaper, and say, that's the truth, when it's outrage lies. And I said, there should be something, see, at least in mass communication, especially some of the elderly who maybe, you know, just don't get out and get a chance to see the other side.
It's called the First Amendment. And people are allowed to say whatever they want to say as long as they don't, as long as they don't cause harm to the other person. So.
As an editorial, if you're communicating, if your job of communication is to express what is going on in the world as far as fact, you can say just that, not editorialize every aspect of things just by your leader.
Again, it goes back to the First Amendment, and if you don't like what the paper's saying, don't buy. And I'm free marketplace, don't buy the paper. I mean, that's the problem we have right now. I wish it was different. Look, I got $8 million worth of negative ads thrown at me. I'd love for your comment to be put in stone. It's going to happen to me again. Of course, I don't know what else they can say. They've called me everything that's possible. I mean, I was a racist, a tax crook, a used car salesman. Come on, what else is left? I guess I'm gonna, the only thing, my wife's told me about this, well, the only thing they didn't say is you cheated on me. And I said, well, that'll be coming. That's probably coming with, because if you look at what happened in the Sutton-Ganley race, there was...
Yes.
You're on the committee for the Dodd-Frank bill. What do you think about that as far as maybe eliminating that or taking that really down the side? I think that might be
Well, again, I'll go back to the health care bill. We've already repealed it, and it's going nowhere unless we have a Senate and a president. Remember, even if the Senate changes, we're not repealing the health care bill. I mean, because the president will override it, we're not going to have enough people to override the veto. Dodd-Frank's the same thing. If we change the president and the Senate, Dodd-Frank will be gone. There's enough people talking about it already. I mean, it's just onerous and overburdensome. And I know we're running out of time. I'm going to kind of ask all of you a question. Now, keep in mind, because I'm trying to hear what people are saying. We're talking about the presidential race. And everybody's watched the debates here recently. You know, people are asking me what my opinion is. I really want to ask all of you. And you'll probably start to get an idea of what my thoughts are. But remember what I said during part of this conversation.